Hello and welcome. This is the second video I've put together on the 2020 Jeep Wrangler EcoDiesel. And this is going to be a little bit different from what I've done in past videos. I'm not really here to talk about the different specs of this Jeep. Plenty of other people have covered the specs, what's inside, what you can order on it. I really want to talk about how this Jeep got me through this last week. So we'll start with a few quick facts. Like I said, this is the Wrangler EcoDiesel. This is the 3-liter V6 turbo diesel that is offered in the Grand Cherokee and the Ram 1500 and is now in the Wrangler for the first time. The Wrangler that I have with me is the Sahara trim, which is considered the more luxurious Wrangler. You can get the Rubicon, which is the more off-road focused trim, although all the Wranglers are really pretty capable. This is the Sahara with some options added on, and the MSRP of this Sahara is right around $55,000. Now that sounds like a lot of money for a Jeep Wrangler, and to be frank, I think it kind of is. We'll dive into that in a minute. But really, at this point, there's no direct competition to a Wrangler, let alone a diesel Wrangler. And of course, with this turbo diesel, you get the most torque that you could ever get out of a Wrangler from the factory at 442 foot-pounds. And this engine also makes 260 horsepower. It's paired exclusively to the 8-speed automatic, and of course, every Wrangler is 4-wheel drive. Now, given the current worldwide pandemic, doubly so in the United States with COVID-19, the coronavirus, I was hoping to do a couple different things with a bunch of friends and this Jeep and some off-road trails, and I decided last minute to pull the plug. I really didn't feel it was responsible given everything that's going on and the efforts to socially distance as much as we can. So instead of putting together a big event with a lot of people off-road like I had initially hoped, I was able to use this Jeep to get out of my apartment for an hour or two at a time, still stay socially isolated from the rest of the world, the rest of the local area. And here's why I thought the Wrangler EcoDiesel turned out to be the perfect companion over the last week. So like I said, it's been kind of a tough week for car enthusiasts. We've been told to socially distance, which means we can't really have a lot of events. We can't have any get-togethers. I know my race weekends coming up have been canceled for the foreseeable future. So it's been kind of a bummer for those of us that are looking forward to getting out behind the wheel and enjoying some good weather and some good driving roads. Thankfully, this Wrangler's been able to put enough of a smile on my face over the past few days. So let's get to it. So first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge this Wrangler in Sahara trim with the EcoDiesel drivetrain is $55,000. That's a lot of money. This is the best Wrangler that Jeep has ever made. You know, it's not the most refined thing in the world, especially not for $55,000. You can buy a lot of other cars and trucks for that kind of money that are objectively better in every single way. But if you want a Jeep, this is the only way you will get a Jeep. So for the moment, this Wrangler competes in a class of one. Ford does have the Bronco coming sometime later this year, allegedly. We've seen some leaks at this point, but no confirmed release date. So like I said, this is it. And going off of that, I've driven a bunch of Wranglers. I've driven this JL generation, the current generation Wrangler, in both Pentastar V6 variation and the new turbo 4-cylinder variation. And I think they're both fine. They're not bad. They're certainly very fun. They're clearly very capable on and off road, but they kind of have been lacking whatever charm the old TJ Wranglers had. Those are the Wranglers from the late 90s. They were the last ones to use that AMC-derived straight-six engine that was all torque, no horsepower. I think it was like 190 horsepower. And they were slow, but they were very charming. And this EcoDiesel has 260 horsepower, so it's quick enough. And it has 440 foot-pounds of torque. And it is the drivetrain to have in these Wranglers, bar none. If I were buying one for myself, I think it would have to be the diesel. And I find it kind of funny, that goes with the Wrangler's overall mantra of being something that makes no financial sense if you're one of those to sit down and put everything in a spreadsheet and crunch the numbers. The EcoDiesel drivetrain costs $4,000. Diesel costs more than gasoline right now. And you'd have to drive quite a bit to make up for the extra cost in your fuel economy. But this drivetrain is torquey. It's not busy all the time. I found the Pentastar and the Turbo 4 to be busy. The transmission is constantly shifting to keep you in the power band, and the diesel, I think, does a really, really good job of just staying at 2,000 RPM or below most of the time and just kind of chugging along, but in a very quick and efficient way. And it's just really pleasant to drive. So I really, really enjoy it. It can only come with the 8-speed automatic, and that's fine. The 8-speed is great. It's a ZF derivative, just like everything else that seems to be running an 8-speed right now. And of course, with the diesel drivetrain, you have to talk fuel economy. So I took the Wrangler out 3 times while I had it. I really have been trying to stay inside, and I've been working my day job full-time from home, so I haven't had a ton of chance to just be behind the wheel. That said, I did put 400 some miles on this Jeep over the course of 3 days. So the first time I took it out, I really felt the need to get out of the house. We had a perfect weather day. It was in the mid-70s. So I took off these 2 roof panels and I did a complete loop of the Washington DC Beltway. And this was the first time really putting some miles on the Wrangler. It put an immediate smile on my face for several different reasons. One being, a convertible makes everything better. Having the wind in your hair, you know, fresh air inside the cabin, it's something that I think everyone needs. And I think in an uncertain time, in a crappy situation, the worst convertible in the world is better than the best hard-topped car. So I took the roof panels out, threw them in the back, hit the DC Beltway. I was able to set the cruise control and jam. I turned up the radio. So first of all, the sound system is great. And second of all, getting away in that regard was exactly what I needed at the time. I was able to be out by myself, not with other people, not putting anyone else at risk, but still just enjoying some time out of my apartment. If you've ever driven on the DC Beltway, it's almost impossible to set the cruise control for any length of time because there's always traffic involved. And I was able to set the cruise. The Jeep does have adaptive cruise control. That and blind spot monitoring are like the 2 driver assistance pieces of tech it really has. But I was able to set the adaptive cruise control and maintain a speed for the entire loop of the Beltway. And the Beltway is 64 miles long. That I thought was pretty fantastic. It was very relaxing because I wasn't doing a whole lot other than watching out for traffic, staying in my lane, and enjoying the music and the fresh air. When I got home, I put the roof back on and I had reset the trip computer to calculate fuel economy for just my trip out of my neighborhood, out of town, onto the Beltway, around the Beltway, and back home. And it reported almost 31 miles per gallon. And I find that really impressive given the aerodynamics of the Wrangler in general are kind of like a small barn. And they get even worse when you take the roof off or take the doors off or whatever. Now, my second trip out was, like I said, supposed to be with a bigger group of people. I was going to get everyone together in a state park in Maryland and do like a light off-roading day. Given this was the Sahara, not the Rubicon, we didn't want to do anything too crazy. I have some friends with some crossovers that wanted to come play. And ultimately, I decided that was just not the most responsible thing to do, so I canceled that event. I called up one friend and said, hey, get your truck, meet me at the trailhead in Virginia. We will go, just the 2 of us, and just have a nice little day. So we met up and ran Tasker's Gap, which is a pretty small off-road trail. It was the only trail open. The Peters Mill Run, where I did my off-road challenge with my BMW X5 last year, was closed for repairs. So it was a fairly short down and back run of the trail, but I was able to get the Wrangler muddy, go over some rocks. It was more or less a light trail drive, but again, really nice opportunity to get out of town and just be in nature for a little bit. Now, going back to the financials of the Wrangler and the EcoDiesel in particular, I found it kind of amusing when we were heading back down the trail. We got stopped by some folks in Jeeps coming up the trail, and they were in the Pentastar version of the JL Wrangler. And they stopped and we just chatted for a minute, you know, through our open windows. And I mentioned, oh, this is the diesel. And they asked about cost, they asked about fuel economy and everything. And they didn't blink one bit when I said, oh, this is a $4,000 option, but you get all this torque. They thought it was just the greatest thing. So obviously, if you're in the market for one of these Jeeps, you have figured out what is important to you, and ultimate financial dollars and cents is not at the top of the list because there's some aspects of driving a Wrangler that you can't quite put into words. And then the third trip with this Wrangler was with my boyfriend. We took a weekend day and took the Jeep to just explore the area where I grew up. I grew up about an hour from where I live now, outside the Washington DC area. We hopped in the Jeep, we just did a little driving tour. And again, the excellent fuel economy was pretty nice to have. The seats were comfortable enough. And we just took a nice little drive and explored. So there's 3 different instances of social distancing in the DC area or thereabouts. using this Jeep to make it all happen. Going out with this Jeep has been a great way to get out of my apartment, but the other piece of this that I really didn't get until this week with this Jeep is the sense of community that you tend to get from having a Wrangler. People talk about the Jeep Wave, which for the sake of accuracy is hand on the steering wheel, 2 fingers up as you drive past another Wrangler. And the best part that I noticed with each of these drives that I took is that everyone in every Wrangler was taking the chance to wave at each other and to acknowledge each other. And with the current climate the way it is, where we need to stay apart from each other, we need to only be with our, our family and our loved ones that are kind of considered our household, having those little Jeep waves, as silly as it sounds, was really, really cool. And with that, that is the 2020 Jeep Wrangler EcoDiesel. Thanks so much for coming along for this video and the other video earlier in the week. Please do give us a subscribe right here on YouTube if you like what we're up to. There will be plenty more of this content to come. And in the meantime, please do stay home, wash your hands, and be safe. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.